Hey there friends, Ian here. This week we're going to be talking about perspective and how exactly you should go about choosing that perspective that you will use for the remainder of your writing projects, present and future. First person, second person, and the three forms of third person are the perspectives you can choose from. There are pros and cons to each of these, and deciding which is the best for your story may be difficult and daunting if you're new to this whole writing thing. But that's what I'm here for, to make these things easier for you to digest. Today we will be discussing the options and how you could very easily decide on a perspective for your story. With that being said, let's get into it. The first perspective you can choose from is first person. First person is told with the pronouns I, me, we, and so on. It is one of the most popular perspectives you can choose, especially in middle grade and young adult fiction. The narrator of first-person stories is the character that you see the world through themselves. This can make the story feel more intimate and bring you closer to the character, which is why it's so powerful and so popular. You are limited to only what the character sees, feels, and perceives about the situation and what's happening around them. First person also allows you to have a very unreliable character voice. You can have this in the others, especially in third person, but in first person, it's one of the most simple ways you can have a reliable narrator. An example of a sentence in first person would be, I ran outside with my dog. An example of a book or book series that follows along with first person would be Percy Jackson and the Olympians. This book series is by Rick Riordan. I don't know if I pronounced his name right, but that's how I've been pronouncing it. Anyway, if you want to feel like you are that character and you are in the shoes of that character, first person is probably the best for you. However, if you're looking for more point of view characters, then you might want to think about choosing something else. Once you get to 3 or 4 first-person point of views, it gets more difficult to decide who is who, and you have to focus a lot on the voice of the character for the character to be able to be recognized. The next point of view you can choose is second person. Second person is told with the pronouns you, your, yours, and more. Second person is the rarest form of all perspectives in fiction writing. I've never read a novel that has been a second-person story, but there are choose-your-own-adventure books, and those are usually probably always told with second person. If you want your reader to feel like they are actually that person, if you want them to feel like they are the main character of the story, then this is probably a good way for you to do it, although you won't have many examples to look at, and a full-length novel in second person might be very difficult to pull off. But I don't really have much experience with second person, so I can't speak much about it. An example of a second person sentence would be, you opened the door to the delivery. And now we get to my favorite forms of perspective in writing. These are the 3 third person point of views. There's third person objective, third person omniscient, and third person limited. We are going to start with third person objective. Third person objective is told with the pronouns he, she, they, and more. Third person objective is like you're looking through a camera. You get all the exterior knowledge, but anything interior you don't see. You are basically a spectator, and that's why this form is mostly used in movies. I've not been able to find an example of a novel written in third-person objective, so it might only be used in movies, if very rarely used in novel writing. The next third-person form is third-person omniscient. Omniscient is told with he, she, they pronouns. However, this is quite the opposite of objective. Omniscient is basically an all-seeing narrator. The narrator knows all about the characters, all about the history of the world. They know the world building, the magic. They know what each character is feeling at every single moment of every single line in a novel. This form gives you permanent access to the world and characters without any restrictions. However, this should be used carefully. You might have a ton of characters and you know everything, but you need to be really careful about head hopping, especially in third person Omniscient. Head hopping is when you switch characters you're focused on too much. Head hopping can become very confusing for the readers and sometimes even yourself as you write it. I've tried writing third person Omniscient before, and it's been a challenge for me to be able to write something like that. Third person Omniscient also makes you feel like you're the farthest possible from your character. You may be focused on a character, but if you know everything around them, then you don't really feel connected with the character as much as you do with first person or the next kind of perspective we will be looking at. An example of a book in third person Omniscient would be Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. My favorite and most common perspective you will find in novels is third person limited. Third person limited also goes with the pronouns he, she, they, and more. However, instead of omniscient, you feel more like first person with third person limited. You are limited to only your character's scope and your character's thoughts, feelings, and perspective of everything around them because you are in their head. You are not all-knowing. You are just like first person where you are only in that one character's head. You will still be going through the main character's head or even a character on the sidelines. Some authors have been able to do that very successfully. However, for our purposes, we will be saying that it usually goes through the main character. Instead of internally, you go through it externally. Third person limited does share a lot of benefits with first person. However, it is just slightly less intimate because you are not actually in that character's shoes. You are just a spectator, but you have all the knowledge of what the main character has. This is also the best perspective to use if you're going to be having multiple different point of view characters. Once you reach 3 or 4 characters, if you're writing in first person, it might be a good idea to switch over to third person limited. One of the good things about this is that it makes switching from first person to third person limited very easy. All you have to do really is switch around the pronouns from he, she, they to I, me, and my. I personally consider this to be the most fun to write for me. I'm not a huge fan of writing in first person. I like to be able to add details to my story that maybe you might not be able to add with only first person. My writing style is very flowery. It has a lot of prose in it, which slows my stories down, but it is how I like to write. Everyone writes differently. For that reason, it is my favorite, but any of them are good choices for any of your writing. An example sentence in third person would be, he ran outside into the rain to get the mail. An example of a book told in third person limited would be The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. Now that we've talked about every kind of perspective there is, let's talk about questions you could ask yourself to be able to come to the conclusion of what story you want to write. In what perspective. The first question that you should ask yourself is, how much information do you want your readers to have? If you want them to have a lot of information, then third person omniscient might be the best for you. If not, try exploring different options. The next question you should ask yourself is, how many point of view characters do you need to complete your novel? The answer for a lot of people is 1, but there are also a lot of people who get more point of view characters, especially in romance stories or epic fantasies. I would say a hard limit for first person point of view characters would be 3 or 4. Maybe even just 3. I wouldn't go over 3 if you're in the first person. If you're going to do second person, you can only have really 1 point of view character because the character is the reader. If you want 1 plus, like 1, 2, 3, 4 and up, then third person limited would be your best bet. Third person omniscient might even be a good choice for it. I just don't have that answer for you. If it is or not, then you can let me know. The next question you should ask yourself is, how far do you want to feel from your character? Do you want to feel the closest? Then first person. Do you want to feel the farthest? Then third person omniscient. If you want something in between, then you do have the 3 other perspectives we talked about that you could look into. The next question you should ask yourself is, do you want a reliable narrator? Now, if you want a reliable narrator, any of these perspectives work brilliantly. However, if you want an unreliable narrator, you're probably going to want to use third person limited or first person. This is because these characters can lie easier than in second person or in third person omniscient, because in third person omniscient you're just gonna know because that's the nature of omniscient. The next question you should ask yourself is, what fits your story best? If these previous questions don't give you an answer to what perspective you should use for your story, then just pick one you like and try it. And then later on, if you find out that that perspective you chose doesn't work, then you change to a different perspective and you can discover it that way. And that's it. Those were ways you could decide on a perspective for your novel and what each perspective brings to the table. In future videos, I will be going over each of these perspectives individually and more in depth in their own videos. Do remember that at the end of the day, this comes down to what you think best, not what anyone else thinks best. Just you. Each and every story is different and told by a different person. Unless, of course, it is your novels you're talking about, then it will always be the same person, but you know what I mean. Comment below what your favorite perspective is and how I can improve these videos for you in the future. I hope you enjoyed and that this helped. If it did, be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already, as I post videos like this every Sunday. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you next week. Bye!